lot of science and technology and data. How do we bring them home to our clients? So with that, let's move to the next page. And again, digitalization. I think I told some of our partner colleagues here earlier last year, I told a lot of our water entities to say, who would like to be resilient? How many hands do you think went up? We are too busy. We have 2 billion people to connect still in Asia Pacific region. Over 1.2 in sanitation and the rest in water supply. We had COVID. We had all these triple C's, climate change, COVID, food crisis happening. They don't have time to be resilient. But then I shifted the question to say, who would like to be digitalized? Everybody. Digitalization brings resilience. That's an entry point. Digitalization can bring youth, can bring new technologies and innovations. So I think we need to again reshift what our entities can chew, what we demystify to help our entities become resilient. So the hub, we can't do it alone. We created the hub, there are probably millions of hubs out there, and you're probably sick of hearing about them. This is not a think tank. This will not do braggadocious, we've done X, Y, and Z stuff. This is purely built to bring whatever tools and technologies the wonderful people of AIT and others are creating home to our water entities. Here is, you want to look at digitalization, outcomes, whatever Jacobs have done or somebody else has done in one platform. And we will also co-create capacity building tools based on what they need, what they say. Not because we think they should be doing this, they will say, ADB, help us create this tool on non-revenue water for my city, because my city is different, and it is different. Resilience has to be localized. Every basin has its own characteristics, every city has its own characteristics, and you have to put decision makers of that city who may have 2-year election cycle, 3-year election cycle, 5-year election cycle. It has to ring to the ears, no? So this is the purpose of the hub, and please join us. And I think this is, what's the next slide? Yep, and we have also committed that at COP27 we launched this initiative, which is really to pool our grant financing. We had partners like the Dutch government, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Japanese government, Korean government, and other partners. And we are on our way to mobilize over $200 million grant towards water security in our DMCs. And with that, we plan, and not just plan, we will exceed meeting 10 billion financing from water sector in ADB. And with that commitment, I will stop here because we're running out of time. Please enjoy the session. It is a wonderful star-studded panel, and I look forward to learning from them. Thank you very much. Khop kun ka.
Okay, thank you so much, Nita. Thank you for setting the scene and laying out why resilience is so important in the water sector. And I would now like to invite Mr. Bindu Lohani, who is the founding board member of the Asia Water Council, distinguished adjunct faculty at AIT, and former vice president for knowledge management and sustainable development at ADB, to deliver us his keynote speech. Mr. Lohani, please.
Have to look at it. Thank you very much, Nitaji, for inviting me to share a few words. Actually, you gave already a good keynote. What I don't need to say is we are all committed to this agenda. We've heard it enough. So the issue to me, the water security, water resilience, the issue is what can we do about it? What can countries do about it? And what can development partners, multilateral institutions, bilaterals, etc., can do about it? And I'm speaking from the ground. And as the agenda says, Nita says, this is something on the ground. So I'm looking at all the time projects and programs, see what they mean. You told me to do in 10 minutes, so I'm going to time myself. Start. Okay, that's going to be my talk today. So this presentation will have 3 points only. The first point is the challenge of water security, and there are 2. Are we water secured? Question. And the other question that you asked in your concept notes, are we water resilient? What is that? RUWR. So these are the first. I'm going to do some reflection now. That's my point number one. The point number two, how do we mainstream water resilience in the water programs and projects? We've done some. We haven't done enough, maybe. Or what can be done? So that's what I'm going to do that. The third point is, what's the way forward? How to look forward. So on the first point, water security and water resilience, Miss Nita Pokharel, Nita G, will remember that back in 2013, the ADB started this biannual publication, Asian Water Development Outlook, and she showed the latest one, 2020. In that first document, they said, what are the key dimensions of the water security? They did that. And that document, the next one I read, which you did, better than the one I did earlier, looked at very detail on each of these key dimensions. And in 2020 document, what they came up, which you know, is 22 of the 49 developing countries are still water unsecured. So the water security issues remains. I don't need to say that. So we're not water secured yet in the region. That's why I think we're probably talking. And therefore, it is something that there's enough to do for the developing countries, development partners, for all of them to do more. Very simple message. Second point. Now this is the main guts. How do you mainstream water security and water resilience? There are many things that you can do, but again, looking from the ground, looking what can be done from the investment side, I will mention 5 things the way I think I'm not yet happy, it's done enough, and needs to be done more. Number 1, which was already talked this morning, so my talk will be easier, the nexus thinking this morning. There's not enough things in it. Well, how many projects do we have on water, energy, and food, and climate? All together in one. We don't program it like that. We don't design projects like that. So there is a lot to do, which was said this morning. But we are committed to SDG, that's what people say. If you commit to SDG, they're integrated individually. You're supposed to look at the nexus thinking. The 6 is water, 7 is energy, 11 is city, 13 is climate, 5 is gender, and you got to look at all those possibilities in the concept. So water. At the entry this morning, I think one of the keynotes said water. So I don't need to talk much about it. And I think that kind of on-the-ground projects, to me, Neetaji, correct me, has not happened enough and should happen if we really committed to make more investment. So from sectoral thinking to nexus thinking, I think it's a very hard job. Someone who is a lifetime worker in the energy sector, now you need to do this. Someone working on the food, you need to do this, but this is the real challenge, in my opinion, which Nita is facing, and she's doing well so far, and I think she'll do more. Number 2, the challenge of climate proofing. I know everybody knows that you heard this is the impact. Go to the IPC report. They will tell you this will happen, that will happen. We know that, but how do we do this? Let me take a few examples. First big job someone has to do is we know that the impact of the climate change has happened, will happen, and will continue to happen. So if you had designed a water utilities or water wastewater program without considering the climate, you got to retrofit them now. I didn't hear the word retrofit yet, but this is a huge job for all countries. And I hope we are able to help them by telling them, this is your water supply, this is your wastewater, this is your city, which will have more frequency flood. Dr. Bavel tells me, which I use, Bangkok used to be 1 in 50 years flood, now 1 in 15. So those engineers like me, you know that it's exponential cost increase in future design of these projects. And I think we haven't done that. We need to make sure that engineers, scientists start doing that, right? And the retrofitting studies, which we need to do in future even more. So that's area which hasn't happened enough, need to happen more. Now, one of the things, I gave a talk one time in the in the academy, as a National Academy of Engineers in the US. And what the biggest challenge to me as a technical person is limitations of the data and the facts. The point you mentioned, how important. For example, if I have to design a project now, okay, I was used to getting 1 in 90 years flood. Now those data are no longer true, as Neetaji rightly said. So I have to nonetheless design these projects taking into 3 factors. One, what's the probability of happening it? And there are many projects I was involved in where people say, sir, this will happen by 2040. Then I got to think, do I spend the money now or 10 years later? How do you do that? The probability of happening and the risk. Do I take the risk? If it's 10%, I'll take it. If it's 50%, I scratch my head. Do I take insurance for 10%? There are instruments we do. And the third is uncertainty. We don't know. If really what people are saying about the climate change they will do, maybe some of those impacts may not happen in future. So probability, risk, and uncertainty are bothering me as a technocrat, how to do this right so that I can actually do the proper adaptation, mitigation, etc. Those kind of facts and data on the ground are not available. This is kind of data I think Neetaji, Professor Bavel, and other people need to create and help to make the investment and the science go together, in my view. You know, sometimes when you go around in the countries, suddenly you will see today, oh, a little bit more rain, oh, climate change. We need to be able to decouple, emphasize the word, disaster and climate change, educate people so that they don't say, today is very hot, climate change. Today, that part rain, climate change. I think these loose talks needs to be strengthened, in my opinion, with science-based information. So I'm really saying in this count, in the AIT conference, we need to have a science-based, evidence-based, knowledge-based and R&D is very, very critical. And those informations and data, facts like 1 in 15 years flood, if you were doing projects in Bangkok, need to get into the project design. I think there's a strong need. The ADB World Bank will not be able to do that kind of research. They're too expensive to do that kind of research. They don't have the time. But the institution who can do need to partner. I think that's my message. Dr. Bavel may not like it, but this needs to happen. You need to partner, okay? The third point is we need to focus on cities. I say this simply because by 2050, more than 65% of the Asians will live in cities. 60-70% of the GDP will be in the cities. This is where water use, wastewater use will be the highest. This is where people are talking about now carbon neutral smart city. Whenever I see the smart water management, smart waste management, they all talk wanting to have it. I look at Philip. Philip is this the guy for water, smart water, anything on the smart water, because I don't do the academics very much. I write to Philip and say, Philip, what's the latest? And when he says, do this, I do this. So I think you need that kind of a smart water, a smart waste management. And as was said this morning, and the IPCC report said, we need to review and transform the entire water project cycle. I think this morning there was a lady who did that. We need to take it further down at the design level, project conceiving level, design, implementation, etc. You know this, you are the implementation person in this. So this is a big focus. And there will be a lot of investment to do that. The fourth point to me is the ICT and technology. I think we can't get away from this because there are lots of smart technologies, which Philip will tell you, in the water, which will create better effectiveness, efficiency, resilience, and it helps with decision making. And as Neetaji said, the digital technology in service, in terms of providing service. I still go to developing countries, my own person, I see people, the non-revenue water leaking, etc. Whereas you go to some developed country, you can sit in this room, you can see the whole country's water system being run, managed, and planned just out of one room. I think we need that kind of a technology to move in. And sometimes the best technologies are not used by the countries, maybe sometimes by the multilaterals, I don't know, because they say the cost is high. But if you do a life cycle analysis, it may come out cheaper because operational maintenance may be better. So we need to put this into the economic and financial system, the life cycle analysis, and make a better technology choice today so that you will not lag behind. So my model for this technology is I always say adopt, adapt, leapfrog. If you see something good and what I'm doing is very old, adopt it, simply, shamelessly adopt it. If you need to adapt to a local condition, do that. And if you think everything that I have is outdated, leapfrog it directly into the new one. I think this is the thinking change that needs to bring into the system. And my fifth point, in very short, is we need new policy. We need to change policy. Maybe the water policies of the organization need to change. Maybe even in the World Bank, maybe the water policy we wrote, old people, maybe you need to change them maybe. I haven't looked at it now, and you're already doing it. The second thing is thinking the circular economy. Don't think anything linear anymore on the water. 3-hour, 4-hour days are gone. So this is the linear thinking. The thinking change will be required. And my third point is to policies on energy, still very important, because if you look at the water utilities, water in the municipalities, my last memory said it could be even 30 to 40% of the total energy consumed could be because of that. And almost 40% of the operating cost of the municipality could be for this one. That's why to have a nice policy on this is very, very important. Looking forward, 3 points. Did I do it in 9? 30 seconds. 30 seconds is enough. 30 seconds is enough. That's a lot of time. No, 30 seconds is enough. That's what 3 points. Looking forward. 1, we need to transform the business model. I mean, we can't do the BAU as before, because as new investment come, you need to do that. That's 10 seconds. Then the next 10 seconds, you need to build the institutions and the organizations so that they are able to mainstream climate change. It doesn't have to be all the time ADB, World Bank, Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, telling them this is how you do it. You need to build a local capability, and you need to tell them how to promote low carbon and climate friendly water projects. Sometimes it's not in the mind of the developing country institutions. We need to do that and hope they will also support the net zero emission. And I'm done in the next 10 seconds, which is I also strongly suggest that through your hub, help these institutions in the countries to develop R&D, science-based sector ability so that they can do this, take this on. And third point is internet financing and partnership. And all about this in the region. I think the water sector guys are still not as good as the energy guys. The blending mechanism is not good. The private sector engagement in the water is less, private resources. I sometimes think, I hope we have something like IPCC as the agency. I hope there are a lot of private sector who will be able to move in the water sector, like Philippe, you have in France. I think they do quite well. I hope you can bring some of those knowledge back. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bindu. It's very interesting to hear your perspective on our water resilience issues. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Brian Avergast, who's the Director on Water and Sanitation for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Looks like I just gained a phone. Yes, and a hat. All right. Well, so I'm excited to be here with you all today and to be a part of this entire event. I had the benefit to be here yesterday to be at the AIT campus where we announced the Global Water and Sanitation Center. So very excited to see even additional ways that AIT is providing leadership across incredibly important topic, such as how are we going to build resilience in the water and sanitation sector, even in the face of climate change. My talk today is going to be focused on sanitation and how do we transform sanitation so that it is contributing to urban resilience. And I'll start with kind of the state of where we're at. Now put up your hand if you're very familiar with progress on sanitation. Sakshi, hand up further. Yeah. Okay, So for those of you who aren't, of all the SDGs, sanitation is the furthest behind, the furthest from hitting our goals. The SDGs, one might say, set a very aspirational target, because it was that everybody get reached with sustainably safe sanitation services. So that means that not only do you have access to a toilet, which was the MDG target, but you have access to a safe toilet, meaning that the waste gets treated. Because as we all know, if the waste isn't treated, people will continue to get sick. And one of the biggest challenges around water, we have challenges around water supply and availability. We also have challenges around water quality. And one of the huge factors to poor quality of water is lack of sanitation. So we're far off the goal, and we need to accelerate in delivering sustainable sanitation services. Now, we have to do this in the context of a world that is where there are more places suffering from more water stresses. So if you look at where the world is growing most quickly, it's in these areas, and it's also the world where people are going to be increasingly living in water scarce areas. So this challenge that we're not meeting the grade of the trajectory of delivering sanitation services that we need to achieve SDG 6.2, and the environment is getting more difficult. Now, it was interesting when I first joined the foundation back in 2013. I remember visiting and speaking to politicians in India, and I'd say, "How are you going to achieve your goals and reach sanitation for everyone in an urban environment?" And they would talk about their 30-year plan, and it eventually led to everybody's going to be connected to sewers, which are connected to a wastewater treatment plant, because frankly, that was the only gold standard there was for urban sanitation at that time. And yet, I grew up in Montreal in the suburbs, and we had a septic tank, and we had fantastic sanitation. Every so often, it was emptied. It was emptied professionally, cleanly. It was taken somewhere. It was treated. Nobody got sick. But that was not a model for sanitation that was widely accepted. There was a sense that in the urban environment, we should have sewers, and that was the only way to go. But what you can see is that we're not on a path for sewers to solve the problem globally. And in fact, if you think about it, the previous slide, the places that would be most in a position of having to build out sewers, if you think of sewers, they are systems that require dramatic amounts of water to function. And that's water that could be used for other needs. And so for all these reasons, the Gates Foundation, though I lead the water and sanitation and hygiene team, our focus has been over the last many years exclusively on coming up with alternative approaches to delivering on urban sanitation for all. And if you've heard the terminology, citywide inclusive sanitation, that's about a concept that the municipality or the utility should feel accountable for making sure that everyone, including the hardest to reach communities, the slums, the informal settlements, that everybody in their city has reliable service delivery for sanitation, and that they get that through whatever means makes the most sense. So in some areas, that will be extending the sewers. For others, it will not be. It will be coming up with the same kind of models of fecal sludge management that served my community well as I was growing up, and still does in 25% of North America today. Or perhaps new approaches, because when you see that we're so far off the trajectory we need to be on, it kind of tells us we need to do something different. And one of the other reasons that we at the Gates Foundation focused on urban sanitation was we saw some opportunities for what you would call leapfrogging, for providing technological approaches that might really be catalytic and transformative. And so I'll speak to those in a moment. Now, we've talked about some of the headwinds, the things that are making it harder to make progress in sanitation, such as water scarcity and water stress. We're all fully aware that the issue with cities are falling behind, And we're not seeing urbanization slow down, especially not in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Urbanization continues to speed up, and those people aren't coming in like in China to, well-designed cities that are empty one day and then everybody comes into the city. They're coming into informal parts of existing cities. They're often coming into the areas that are most likely to flood, that are most vulnerable to the kind of challenges that only become more frequent due to climate change. Now we are starting to see some tailwinds, some things that are helpful, in that I would say that it's quite dramatic how much more likely a politician will be in 2022 to speak about sanitation than they might have been in 2012 or 2002. There is still a taboo about talking about sanitation, but it seems like there has been at least some acknowledgement that this is a critical component of quality of life and of good urban living, and of basically being a reasonable government in terms of delivering services. And so you have more governments that are happy to talk about it, and you have more policies that are really taking the lead. And every now and then you will have a leader like Prime Minister Modi in India, who will actually make it kind of a marquee mission for the country. And all of a sudden it's getting talked about a lot. So that's helpful, but we have a lot of challenges. So I want to spend just a few more minutes talking about what would it mean for us to think in a leapfrog fashion and to really bring more innovation to bear on these huge challenges. I'd say about half of our program over the last 10 years has been focused on getting governments to recognize and getting partners to be able to kind of contribute to service delivery using the technologies that we already have at hand. So that's embracing fecal sludge management and designing fecal sludge treatment plants. But there are a couple areas where we've decided that we want to invest in more innovation. For example, what if the treatment plants where the trucks deliver the sludge could be dramatically smaller and could generate outputs that might have commercial value? That's the goal behind an omni-processor. So use technology to treat all the fecal sludge, make sure that there's no pathogens in the waste, and in fact perhaps have biochar or electricity to clean water that can be an outcome of that technology. And then you've probably heard the terminology of reinventing the toilet. That can be done either at a community scale for schools, for public toilets, community toilets, or the most aspirational is really reinventing the toilet at the household level. Today we are starting to see, it's very, very early days, but we are starting to see companies delivering community reinvented toilets. That means toilets that recycle all of the water that they use to provide a flush toilet experience, and toilets that don't have any downstream further treatment that needs to happen. So for instance, in Johannesburg, 3 different companies are offering 3 different types of community toilets that use these principles and are really kind of leapfrog technologies. Don't need to be connected to the water grid or to any sanitation grid. Now for the household toilets, it's more challenging, but I just want to say we're making some progress there as well. This is the very latest prototype, and Roshan inserted this picture of me on this new throne. But here what you see is this is an appliance, a new type of appliance that treats all the solids and all the liquids that get deposited into it. Now what comes out of this toilet is solids that are completely sterilized, so no pathogens, and that in fact have no smell, look kind of like used coffee grounds, and water that is also clean, that is used for the next flush, but it actually could be useful water. There are social issues about what this water will ever be used for, but I imagine that if this was available in the market when Cape Town was facing their 0 day, you might have had a lot of households that would be buying this toilet because it would mean that their toilet, no matter what happened to their water supply, would continue to work, and in fact they'd have some excess water to maybe keep their plants alive when their water wasn't coming out of the tap. Now, and I'll go through my last slides very quickly here. I don't know what this is. Okay, well, we'll just talk through it. The other aspects, there are many other aspects of innovations that I think are necessary that aren't relying on technology. Innovations in terms of service delivery. So for instance, could you deliver a toilet as a service where the household isn't buying an appliance like that, but a service operator is paying for that asset, but servicing it, and the household is paying for that service on a monthly basis. We also see tremendous innovations in terms of understanding how to map the risk of sanitation systems, especially in the context of climate change. So some exciting tools to be able to go into a city and from a number of different dimensions understand where is the risk, and therefore where should governments be investing the most in resilience. Well, there we go. So for example, here in Bidemar, you just see, different parts of the very same city respond very differently to a flood event. The top left corner, what kind of tools would be helpful for letting the city know in advance exactly what the issues they're going to face. So with this, especially with the additional challenges, I'll just wrap up and say that we focus on sanitation because we think that it's an area where we could be doing some real leapfrog thinking, and that this work is critical to cities being resilient in ways that they aren't today, no matter what their solutions are. If they're pit latrines and septic tanks, with every flood, that's a potential cholera outbreak. New approaches that make sure that pathogens aren't present to be released into the environment or aren't being released every day, we think are dramatic improvements on urban resilience, and that contribute not just to sanitation service delivery, but to making water supply delivery also more viable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Sorry, there's a few technical hiccups. Yeah, if delivering a session online is tricky, then hybrid, make it ×2. Thank you for your patience. I will now, we now have two presentations from two online speakers. Mr. Mohsin, who is the chief engineer of the local government engineering department from Bangladesh, and Dr. Sarah Young from the associate professor at the Northwestern University. Could I get Mr. Mohsin's camera? Okay, yeah, we can see
yes.
We can see Dr. Mohsin. Okay, we will share your slides. So, yeah. 1 second, here we go. I'm controlling them, so you can just say next slide when you start. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. It's really very pleasure and honor to me to invite here, but unfortunately I could not actually join physically to this conference. However, I would like to share the issues that actually kept for me. And before that, I would like to introduce about myself and my department also. I am from the local government engineering department, and it is under the local government rural development and cooperative ministries. And in this ministry, we have two to the department. One is LGED and another is the Public Health Engineering Department. I am talking from actually local government engineering department, which is mostly working in Bangladesh for the rural sector, rural infrastructure development sector, water sector, and also the urban sector. Now we can come to the main point. We have our national policy, national water filter plan that we have seen in the slide. You can go You can skip it for the next slide, please. And we have,
Sorry, Mr. Mohsin, could you
as
just
you
speak
know
a
about
bit
the
louder?
situation of Bangladesh, it is from the Ganga, Padma, Brahmaputra, what is Jamuna, yeah, the Meghna, all three big uh, rivers. Actually, the all water is coming from the north side of India, and all the water is we have to through these big rivers flowing to Bay of Bengals. We have very uh, some usable recharge from in the ground water level, but mostly in some area of our country is sometimes fully dependent on the groundwater. But as we have huge scope of retention of nature, surface water in our country, but we need actually a planned approach for retaining the water. You know, in Bangladesh, we have, you know, that a lot of time we have the long rainy season, but all the rain runoff going to the Bay of Bengal very quickly. On the other hand, the water that is coming from the neighboring countries during our need in the surface water irrigation system, we cannot have. We have a lot of scarcity of water in our country, and during that period, we don't have enough water, and that's why in the dry season we have to depend mostly on the groundwater, and we need to actually do a lot of works for retention and use of the surface water in our country. So if we can share something for the water supply and sanitations in Bangladesh, we have the where we are using actually the water, mostly the authority here is the municipality and the city corporations. And in the rural area, mostly our household level water is coming from the ground water. It depends on the groundwater actually. I think we need to change the slide. 2 slides I have to skip. Next one, please. Next one, yeah. And water supply and sewerage authority we have, and WASA, that we call the WASA. It is mostly working in the big cities like Chittagong and Dhaka, and other big cities like Rajshahi. They also the water WASA is working there. But most of the rural area, we have not this kind of water supply and sanitation authorities there. Mainly we are depends on actually the local government institutions. They are working for that. And even in the city corporation level, normally we have the authorities there. Sometimes we are facing lots of actually problem for having the availability of the safe drinking water for the household level and in the city. You know that the Bangladesh is a very highly dense country, and to maintain the needs of the water, especially the drinking water, it is in the city corporation sometimes become very challenging. And we have to follow the rules. We have the apps is there, but the WASA and the other city corporation, they cannot enhance the um, the revenue to actually supply the water. It is the government cannot dramatically change the cost of the water for the people,
Mr.
but we have
Mohsin,
to
just to let you know,
sometimes participate.
if you could wrap up in 1 minute.
Yes, I could do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the next slide, one slide, the problems in both the water, the surface water contaminations, arsenic contaminations is also severe. The next slide, please. And salinity problem in the coastal area is truly severe. On the other hand, the iron and groundwater level warring and the source of problem in the hilly areas also, the water crisis is there. So what are the actually remedial measures to do something for the future? We have to do a lot of works in the water supply and sanitations remedies for the Bangladesh, and mostly we have to create some retention capacity of the surface water. That means the rainwater harvesting, increasing the storage capacities in the natural resources. And also we have to desalinations of the saline waters in the coastal area is the really very important for us. And the awareness of the people is important also, because water is actually not, it is very neat, valuable natural resources. And it is really need to actually increase the productivity of agricultural sector in our country to feed huge populations of Bangladesh. So saying all these things, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohsin. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Sarah, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. You'll be sharing your slides, right? Great. Thank you. Okay.
I believe I can.
We
Yes.
can, and we can see them in a TV. Okay, but we need to see her slides as well. I see them. So 1 second. Can you put the slides there as well? And in the meantime, could I ask the panelists that are present to start moving to the stage, so that once Sarah is done, we can start. 1 second, Sarah. Okay, I'll just go there. Yeah, I'll sit there on that one, so sit here, yeah. Thank you. No, whatever. Okay, Dennis, sorry, to the online. Dennis, if you can hear me, I think you're now the host, so could you try to put to pin? I think that's it. Make pin the host. Is it okay? Okay. 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 Just see 1 second. Is it better to start the panel? Yeah, okay. No, we're good? Sarah, start the panel. Okay, Sarah, sorry. We'll start the panel, and then we'll keep a few minutes for you to show your presentation. Thank you for waiting. Haven't we been talking about adaptation? Thanks, Sarah. Okay. All right. So, okay, we have here, and oh, but wait, I also need the other panelists on the screen. Okay, so I'll start with the ones who are here, but yeah, in the meantime, if Mira and Laura and sorry, Penny, if you turn on your cameras, then we'll put you in. Okay, so where do I start? I will first introduce our panelists that are here in person. So we have Mr. Abdullah Mamoon, Senior Project Officer from ADB's Bangladesh Resident Mission. Then we have Professor Mukand Babel, Professor of the School of Engineering here in AIT. I think we're all very familiar with you. And Mr. Roshan Shrestha, Deputy Director for the Water and Sanitation and Hygiene of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Dr. Laura Beckwith, the Mekong Coordinator for the Australian Water Partnership. Our online panelists are also Dr. Mira Mehta, Professor Emeritus from CEPT University, and last but not least, Mrs. Penny Dutton, Associate at WaterAid Australia. And we can see, Dr. Mira and Penny, we still can't see you. Can you just say hello, Penny, so that we know you're hearing?
I can hear you.
Great.
I can see myself on the screen.
Oh, okay. I see you on one screen. Can we just turn that screen? Yeah, can you just turn that screen? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Penny, you're now on screen. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, let's start. Mr. Mamoon, Bangladesh is one of the most affected countries by climate change. And we've heard a lot today that water is one of the main ways we feel it, if not the main way we feel climate change. ADB has recently approved the Exemplary Coastal Towns Climate Resilient Project of 250 million, which is fully adaptation finance. Could you give us a bit more about this project and how can we do more of projects like this in the future? Oh, yeah, microphone.
You see, the project took 1 year to prepare, and they gave me 4 minutes to present. 2 minutes, okay. So, as you said, I mean, we all know that the impact of the climate change already being witnessed in Bangladesh, and we see the recent flood in Sylhet, and also same time the drought in the north side. And I think the future will witness more of such kinds of devastating flood. However, the Bangladesh government has a very good policy and strategies in place. We have a very comprehensive, we call the NAP, National Adaptive Plan. There is a Delta plan also for 2100, and then 8 5-year plan. However, what is important, that translate such plan into a adaptation financing and also the climate financing. And ADB actually bridging the gap between the climate financing, planning and the financings. So as you said that ADB board this year in October, approved one project we call the CTCRP, Coastal Town Climate Resilient Projects. This is basically 310 million USD, 6 million USD coming from the Bangladesh government sides and 250 million from the ADB. And the objective of the projects is to support the government of Bangladesh for an integrated and sustainable urban development in achieving the more livable city, to improve the livable city in the face of increasing the climate related disaster risks. So it's an overall integrated approach. And if you see that in Bangladesh, coastal towns, basically facing towns, and then recently we are facing like climate migrants. As you see, the more people is coming from coastal towns to Dhaka. And the last one, I would say that we have the sea level rise, saline intrusions, and the water scarcity. So considering these challenges, these projects have 3 major outputs to tackle the challenges. One is we call the climate resilient infrastructures. So this infrastructure not only for the water, but in terms of the improved services, water, sanitation, road and drainage. And the same time, we have also some innovations that how to bring some innovations to the green space. We are currently developing a guideline for the open area development, like the green and blue area development. At the same time, we have also the inclusivity, that how to address the poor people in the slums for the water and sanitation security. And the second component we have here that we call the livelihood approach. It's like economic inclusiveness. we will be implementing this project in 6 municipalities for their economic empowerment, in particular for the urban poor and the women-headed families, and see that how it works. We have a customized tailor-made training for the income journey activities. At the same time, we have the third component, since the project will be implemented by the municipality. So we are thinking there is one component for that how municipality have the institutional capacity, in particular for the financial sustainability, because there is some asset will be generated through the projects. So the financial sustainability is very important. So we are also looking into the digitalizations, how to improve their revenue generations, and how to bring the tax collection and the billing systems. And also the knowledge we generate through these projects, how it can be translated for the future sustainability and scale up of the projects. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, definitely. The financial sustainability of the project is very important, and it's great to see. It'll be great to see how this project develops, and so we can learn from it. Now I'd like to hear from Dr. Mira. If it's Dr. Mira, can you hear us?
Yes,
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so you have a long experience in the water, urban development, and also in infrastructure finance. And Brian also mentioned earlier that although there has been a big push for sanitation around the world, the number of people without access to safe toilets is increasing. You also worked with ADB recently on supporting benchmarking and regulatory framework in Nepal. Could you tell us a bit about this work and how can it help bring...
Sanitation receives so much emphasis. So it's really very heartening. I remember the days 15 years ago of MDG when the global community, WASH community, had to make a big effort to get sanitation included in the MDGs at that time. So this is a real shift that has taken place, and it's really good to see this. Having said this, and something I wanted to refer back to what Neetaji said also in the beginning, in terms of the importance of systems approach, enabling framework. And one key aspect of that is to have strong monitoring systems. And this is critical if we really want to achieve improvements in sanitation that Brian was also really referring to. It's interesting that the current global monitoring system that JMP uses actually shows that in fact, most countries in the world and all regions are on track to meet the ODF target by 2030, more or less. But on safely managed sanitation, that is not the situation. And I think Brian also hinted at that. So that's something that we need to be concerned about. Safely managed sanitation, as we all know, refers to the entire service chain and not only the access at the household level. So that's something that we would need to be mindful of as we go forward. It's also much more difficult to monitor safely managed sanitation, and it cannot be done easily through household surveys, which has been the main basis for most of JMP's monitoring systems. So it's something that we will have to keep in mind. The new framework of citywide inclusive sanitation, in a way, is very akin to safely managed sanitation, looking at the full service chain, but also focusing on access for everybody. And I think that is something that has to be kept in mind as we move forward. In this background, and before I come to the Nepal work which Mafalda asked me to talk about, let me just give a slide, 1 or 2 liners on the work that we have been doing in India with a Gates Foundation grant to provide, look at monitoring of water sanitation services in India, in urban India. And this is something that we started in 2 states in India and have now gone up to about 1,000 cities across many cities in India, across many states in India. So that's something that's very, very important. It's aligned with the government systems. And I think Neetaji referred to the need for, and I think other speakers also referred to need for digitalization and the PAS or the performance assessment system that we have sort of helped develop for Government of India and state governments actually is based on a digital platform working with a major tech company in India on a academic business partnership kind of a model. So this is the background in which we took up really the Nepal work. Nepal, they wanted us to, ADB requested us to look at the possibility of introducing sanitation monitoring. And we felt that it would be good to look at sanitation monitoring in context of the kind of institutional systems that actually exist in Nepal and what kind of monitoring systems that are already currently being used by the government there. So that is how we have developed this approach. We looked at the institutional system. One very key feature in Nepal has been that recently the new act that has come has put a lot of power with local governments. And in fact, the water sanitation services are now a responsibility of local governments. And therefore, we feel that it is very important to bring in the local governments in any monitoring systems that we talk about. We also looked at the current monitoring systems that already exist. And again, Nepal government has already developed a digital system for water supply called NWash, and that's something that's working quite well. It's still in the beginning stages, but has been taken up by most entities in Nepal. So we have suggested that how do we build on that, and we add, currently it looks at only water supply, so how do we add what sanitation in that system? So this is something that's ongoing. It's something that we hope will continue to provide support to government of Nepal, hopefully with ADB's support. But it's to do this, and based on our experience in India, we felt that it would be very important to link the NWash system not only at the national level but to local, regional, and the national level, because that is how the new system is currently developing. As well as that, you need to provide incentives for local government to take up this system. And there are experiences from India where this has been done very, very successfully. So this is something that we will hopefully be taking further in Nepal to support. And lastly, I just want to, since this, I thought that session was on climate change. It's very important to start looking at monitoring systems also from the climate change angle. And this is something that we have started to do as part of our performance assessment system here. We actually are doing different aspects or different of tools that we are. So we are working with cities to develop what we refer to as an ESG, environment, social and governance, ESG framework that is being used by corporates on a large scale, that how do our cities also become ESG ready. So that's something that we are currently developing, and we are hoping to launch this somewhere in the month of January or so in India. It's also possible to introduce some key indicators of progress in related to climate resilience for water supply and sanitation. And this is something that we again started to look at more at city level in the state of Maharashtra, where we work with support of a CSR partner to implement in 3 cities. But the idea would be to learn from this experience and develop a monitoring system that can be then scaled up. And this is something that it's very important that the local governments are in charge of this system, and then it's scaled up to state and national level. So that is something that we are hoping to do, and I hope that this will provide a lot of lessons of how such monitoring efforts can be taken up. So to close with this adage, I don't know who is it from, whether it's from Gates Foundation or somebody else, but that what you don't measure and monitor, there is no way to manage and improve. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, apply it in water sanitation sector to the best way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right. I'll ask the colleagues here to try to keep it as short as we can. Yeah, so I just wanted to know from Dr. Babel, we just had the launch of the WhatsApp, and could you please explain or give us a bit more idea of how does the granular assessment of city scale water security, how can this help build resilience in cities?
Thank you very much, Mafalda. I will be very short because you know about WhatsApp. Neetaji already explained briefly maybe. So let me start with what Meeraji said at the last sentence, right? What we cannot manage, what we cannot measure. And that's the basis of our developing this tool, which we developed. Now, we developed it from the perspective of that we feel the relation between water and climate, which is also clear. Don't need not to repeat what has been said since morning, and we know about it. So we thought that let's do something at the scale, spatial and temporal, where we can operationalize it. And in words of Neetaji, it's the cities and is the basins. And exactly that was our kind of thinking at that time in 2014-15. I can tell you about 10 years back. Cities are the engine of growth, everybody knows. So let's do something at city. That was one. The second one, river basin scale. River and cities are linked, and river basins are the hydrologic boundary and where the investment can come. And the cities and basins, these are the. Now, third point which we had in mind is it should be a comprehensive assessment, not looking only into water supply and sanitation, but we have following the kind of, the water security framework which was developed by ADB. That was our guide at the beginning. But we thought we should be doing at city level and at basin level. Now I have reached to that, and we think that what should be the spatial scale? It should be cities, where data, the constraints are data and implementation. So data and implementation should be kept in mind when it comes to what spatial scale we would like to take. Climate change would affect whole hydrologic cycle, as everyone knows. We would like to see from the perspective of, all the 5 components of, or 5 dimensions we call it, of water security. One is water supply sanitation. Other is how economically we can using water, whether it's in basin or at city. Environmental water security. Then water related disasters. And the 5th dimension is governance aspect. So this is how we have developed our framework. Now to know it more, we will run we have run 4 training programs in India, in Nepal, in Vietnam, and in Thailand will be on 4th of this month. Means in fact 2 days from now. We have applied it to several cities. We will take next step in terms of working with the cities. My friend is sitting here. The research is done. Okay, we are at the stage that we should be able to give it to our colleagues from cities, municipalities, and other water entities. Okay. Enough?
I think
Thank you.
Can we
Thank you very much.
You. Just now here for to Penny. We've been sorry to Laura. Sorry, Penny. Yeah. So water is, we all know it's a shared resource, and the ability to have dialogues on the water usage between countries and even within the communities is crucial. Could you tell us a bit about your experience on bringing community voices and management perspective from indigenous people into the water sector?
Sure, very quickly, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the Australian Water Partnership, which I've just joined last month, actually, as the Mekong coordinator. And AWP is a water for development partnership that's funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia. And our work brings technical expertise from Australia to work in partnership with stakeholders in the region, predominantly government, but also with civil society and with private sector, so building those cross-sectoral partnerships to address multiple water-related challenges, including drought, flood, water scarcity, security, which we know are all exacerbated by climate change. And we work across both policy, creating an enabling institutional environment for the water sector, as well as practical, sustainable water infrastructure. But importantly, recognizing that water needs and the impacts of climate change are not evenly distributed, we include an element of social inclusion programming in all of our work in order to ensure that inclusion, accelerating youth, Indigenous, and gender action on climate and water. This has been an important part of Australia's history. I am not Australian, if you're wondering about the accent, but I am Canadian, and it's been an important part of our history as well. But it's a topic that I think we all have a great deal to learn about. But the work that AWP has promoted has already shown that recognizing diverse knowledges in water and showing how Indigenous, traditional, and community knowledge can be used alongside other forms, what we may call scientific knowledge, has led to building more inclusive, more equitable, and more sustainable solutions to water governance challenges. This work is only beginning, so this is new for us, but I think it's extremely valuable, extremely critical, and a key part of knowledge sharing, embracing those other forms of knowledge. So I hope we'll continue this work.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Laura. Yeah, it's the Indigenous people's knowledge is crucial to be implemented, and we've heard a few times since this morning about it. So it gives us hope that this will continue to be the trend. Now I'll pass it on to Penny again, super quickly. Now talking to Laura, we already got a bit more sense of the social part of it, but usually when we talk about water resilience, we end up talking about the technicalities and, infrastructure side, but your background is more on the social sector, and you've recently developed some work alongside ADB on informal water and sanitation suppliers. And could you tell us very quickly, 2 minutes, about this work, and maybe then 30 seconds on how COVID impacted the service delivery on informal settlements?
Okay, thanks, Mafalda. The piece was actually research on water and sanitation in Asia's informal urban areas. And this is a chapter in a book that has recently been published by ADB and ADBI, which is called Informal Services in Asian Cities, Lessons for Urban Planning and Management from the COVID-19 Pandemic. So that's available on the ADB website if anyone is interested. So the research looked at the role of intermediaries, so that's small and medium-sized enterprises that are providing water supply and sanitation services to informal settlements. And they're filling the gap between formal water utilities or local government sanitation services and the demand from the community. And we looked at 6 case studies from Bangladesh, Cambodia, Nepal, and the Philippines before and after COVID. And we found that actually these intermediaries were already very flexible and innovative, and they had to be to overcome the barriers to accessing services in these settlements, such as access to land or low incomes and the affordability of services. So what happened when COVID came along, you'd think that those intermediaries would be under a lot of pressure, but what they did was they even adapted further. So rather than collapsing because of the pandemic, that these social enterprises found further ways to be innovative and keep services running during lockdowns and in the face of social distancing. So they used technology, they used their community contacts, they adapted their payment systems, and yeah, so they, as you say, these are examples of social and I guess micro financial resilience. And there were other examples of physical resilience around the climate change, like water recycling, rainwater harvesting, energy saving and solar lighting, etc. But what we can see is that these service providers are very innovative at keeping services running, and they can help communities to be resilient, and they also need to be included in project planning and design. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Penny. Thank you for, showing how digitalization has also helped these the service delivery of these settlements. Now, for Roshan, and then I don't know if Sarah is still online. So Roshan, we've heard a lot of digitalization and innovation also through the day, sorry. However, we've also heard that governments tend to be very risk averse, and it takes a lot of work to help them get these new innovations. How could you tell us a few thoughts on how can we make these innovations de-risked so that they become more palatable to the governments?
I will give you an example from technology, okay?
2 minutes.
2 minutes,
Yeah.
just raise your finger, then I will stop.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is seeing is believing, right? So this is what we need to do. And when Brian was showing his toilet, and everybody must be surprised, wow, this is toilet, no? And then I was sitting with Dr. Loney, and he asked me, hey, is toilet done? So how much it cost? I said, $59, sir. Yeah, cheap. Okay, then let's start. So, this is the way how it goes. So seeing by believing. So this is what actually we are doing. And in next 2 months of time, ADB will be showing our Omni processor in Rohingya camp. All development partners are waiting that how it operates. They are queuing up. There are at least 5, 6, 10 units are already on the queue. So this is the way how we can convince. Of course, then we need strong political will as well. How we really change their mindset, no? And yeah, one is saying by believing, other is pressure. For example, yesterday we have a mayor from Dhaka. He was said that I need technology. Bring me technology, I will immediately implement. I can regulate all those households who are discharging their waste in the canal. So he's desperately waiting for technology, right? This is another example, political will, political commitment. Brian already gave example of the India, without Prime Minister Modi, it can't be happen, right? So all these things we are expecting that all whatever we are, either digital tool, what we are developing, technology, what we are developing, that we want to demonstrate. That's why we are not engaging too many countries, small few countries, but deeply engaged, showing some results and attracting. For example, you can see our partner ASCII, Administrative College, they're just running the sanitation tour. Do you hear about the sanitation tour ever? No. People hear about it, okay, let's enjoy the place and do to make a tour. But people are going for sanitation tour, no? they will learn from there. This is the way how believe that once they convince, then regulation start. Then of course we need to do a lot of regulatory standard need to develop. For example, we already have the standard for the sanitation system that what we are working, ISO 30500. Today, my colleague from TU SUB, they had nicely presented today. Similarly, we have ISO 30800. All those standards need to be implemented, and to implement that standard also without convincing the government that this really works, they cannot work. So we will be working very closely with them, and of course then we need to also attract private sector, how they earn money. Then we are doing a lot of evidence-based analysis we are doing so that we can prove that this non-sewer sanitation is much better than the sewer system. Then bank will also put money. Government will ask money to put money because our citywide inclusive sanitation program that we just discussed, that will help to bring this all ideas to inclusive sanitation. That means they need sanitation for non-sewer area, sewer area, and then this is the way everything will go very well.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you. Thank you. Very succinct. Sarah, I see you here on one screen.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for waiting.
Great.
I know you have a presentation. Could we ask you to do it in turbo in about 4 minutes? And thank you so much.
Mafalda, how can I say no to you? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to go quickly.
Thank you.
And I'll even skip some slides. So we all agree that no one should be left behind. But current global indicators aren't always. Now has come up 3 times. You can't manage what you can't measure. And I promise this was in my slides before it came out. It seemed very clear that we needed better data, more precise data, more holistic data on experiences with water insecurity. So I pulled a team together, anthropology, and we trialed 30 items we thought could universally measure water insecurity experiences. And some of them were garbage, but some of them worked really well. And I'm not going to tell you about scale development, but if you go to hwise.org, you can see all of the statistics, blood, sweat, and tears that went into the scales. What we have found, I'm going to skip this slide, is that these 12 items that can be asked in 3 minutes are valid, reliable, and equivalent for measuring experiences with water access and use. So we can compare scores in Punjab to scores in Kathmandu to Kisumu. And that's really powerful for understanding who is being left behind. Now, we had been taking this sort of bottom-up approach, working in different sites, but we also wanted to have comparable data, nationally representative data. And so for that, we partnered with UNESCO and Gallup World Poll to implement an individual version. So it was the same items. How often are you worried about water? How often do you change the food you eat because of problems with water? And we separated the advantage of looking at the individual level is you can see how it varies, for example, by women and men. So this paper shows the prevalence of water insecurity. It was published last week in The Lancet. And we can look at, for example, what the regional prevalences are of water insecurity experiences. But I think what's more interesting is that we can see more precisely who is being left behind. We can finally count these things. So these are nationally representative data from India. And along there are 12 items in the scale. And along the left, you can see the frequency with which people couldn't wash their hands or had no water to drink or went to bed thirsty. With a cutoff that we've established of 12, about 15% of Indians are water insecure. But we can dig deeper to see who is being left behind. We can see women are more water insecure. We can see water insecurity is more common in rural settings. We can see that water insecurity goes down as income quintile goes up, but that water insecurity is found across all income quintiles. And these kind of data are useful to know who is water insecure, but because we're measuring at the household and the individual level, we can tie it to a range of outcomes that really gets people interested across sectors, across health, econ, nutrition, and mental health. So I have many more things to say, But what I'll tell you just for now is that the WISE scales are really catching on. We will soon have more nationally representative data in other Asian countries. The wind is at our back. USAID is mandating it. The Mexican government has taken it up. UNICEF is trialing it. And really the take home here is that the WISE scales are, it seems to me, has this wind behind their back because they can be used across multiple levels. So we can look at the prevalence. We can measure before and after to understand the impacts of programs. We can also tie water insecurity to a range of well-being, such that I would argue it's useful to measure, to take 3 minutes to use these experiential measures as we make decisions about investment and advocacy and as we shape policy. 4 minutes.
That was 4 minutes and a half. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and for bearing with us with some teething problems. Yeah, I'm glad even online, we didn't leave anyone behind. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, Nita. Yeah.
And thank you, Mafelda, for being such wonderful moderator.
Recording in progress.